In the beginning, there was an egg. The egg was always present, silently residing in a void free from light. This was before everything in the universe came to be. At some point, when the moment called for it, the egg hatched. Out came an omnipresent being, full of creativity. The being looked at the empty void and decided to create what would be its messengers and helpers: space, time, and order. It blessed them with different powers: the ability to create progression for time, the ability to remove the void for space, and the ability to uphold creation for order. When this was done, the being saw that what it did was good. It set out to do even more, creating organic matter with the help of space, time, and order to introduce nature. Elements were created, and from these elements came many objects that filled the void, eventually creating galaxies. The being saw that what it did was good, and it set out to create life. It formed the earth and everything in it. From the rules it set in nature, it helped nature to make creatures that basked in its blessings with incredible power. These creatures slowly adapted to their environments and changed, their previous forms slowly going extinct save for one. From these changes, the being saw nature becoming personified in its creatures, and saw it was good. Once the being saw nature could sustain itself, it set out to create its biggest feat, forming other beings on Earth in its image. As it created them, it made other creatures that could help these beloved creations: knowledge, emotion, and willpower. Thus, the dawn of humankind and civilization began. However, at some point, Order didn't understand the importance of humans. It didn't want to accept the fact that humans, lesser than the powerful creatures that were created, were preferred by the being more than it and its siblings. It rebelled, but was easily thwarted and banished to the void, forced to uphold creation without freedom. Once gone, the being wished to teach humans the purpose for their creation. So, it created physical vessels for itself, time, and space. By consequence, the banished order also received one. Humans named the being's vessel Arceus, time's vessel Dialga, and space's vessel Palkia. Each were worshipped, with Arceus holding the biggest importance due to being the creator. Unfortunately, Order made its presence known when some humans sought to destroy the being's creation, doing its job unwillingly. Seeing that, humans named its vessel Giratina. If they could convince it or subdue it to do as it wished using promises of revenge, they thought they would be as powerful as the creator. Over time, good and bad developed. Humans learned to subdue the creatures Arceus made, known as Pokémon, to domesticate them as companions. While this was happening, evildoers saw Pokémon as tools for their personal growth. And that is the start of the Pokémon timeline. This is an interpretation of many theories, lore, and logical reasoning surrounding how the Pokémon universe came to be, which hasn't been explored too much in the games. With the introduction out of the way, I'll immediately jump into the multiverse. The Pokémon Multiverse was formally introduced in the XY era of the Pokémon games, specifically in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Many fans thought this was just another remake of the original versions. With each new reveal, it was anything but. New Mega Pokémon were slowly shown, hinting that something was off with these remakes. When they came out, the story was completely different from the original narrative, especially in the Delta episode. The Delta episode, which wasn't there in the originals, explicitly confirms that the story takes place in a different continuity than the original. The looker we meet is the one from Pokémon Platinum and Pokémon Black and White, both the first one and the second one, who ended up in this timeline and doesn't recognize anything because he lost his memory. With context clues, we learn that the original timeline has no Mega Evolution whatsoever. If you want concrete evidence, look at the story in Ruby and Sapphire and compare it to the Omega version. This revelation shows there's two timelines for the franchise: a timeline where Mega Evolution doesn't exist, and one where it does. A popular theory in the community is that the war explained in XY is what caused Keystones and Megastones to form, so the war didn't happen in the original timeline because there's no Megas. That is pretty much it for the designation of the timelines. Now I'll sort out what games are in each of them. Gens 1 through 5 are in the original timeline. Here's where one issue appears though. The remakes are very weird to place. I have a logical explanation for that. the Gen 1 and 2 remakes are the representatives of their respective generations, at least in the original timeline. Think of them as the definitive versions of the OGs, because they add new Pokémon and quality of life updates. By proxy, Platinum is a definitive game representing Gen 4, even more so because it has a further clarified story and is the first appearance of our boy Looker. Here's another issue that appears: the player character that we choose. Thankfully, we have an answer for that. Pokémon Masters confirms which of the protagonists the events of their respective generation revolve around are canon. So, all the other protagonists that aren't the canon ones only appear in a singular branch off the timeline. For Crystal and Yellow, since they have different stories and are hard to connect to the main OG timeline, they can be in another branch, adding a total of 2 branches to the tree. In the Mega Timeline, we have Gens 1, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Gen 8 and 9 seem the outliers at first because they don't have Mega Evolution in the gameplay. However, this is easy to prove. Scarlet and Violet have references to Mega Evolution, such as Mega Salamence in Roaring Moon's Scarlet Book description. In the same game, it's shown that Penny is Peony's daughter, so that connects both generations together and places them in the Mega Timeline. Gen 1 is back here again because of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Now as for the recent remakes, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, I would honestly consider them to be part of the timeline. Hear me out. It makes sense Looker didn't exist in the Mega Timeline, because the only one we know of and follow is the Looker from the original timeline. BDSP follows DP's story, which didn't have Looker, so it's a good way to disprove any weird paradox things of 2 identical people existing in the same universe. Gen 7 is a whole can of worms. There was basically a remake for Sun and Moon not even a decade after release. In the Ultra versions for SM, the characters confirm the existence of the events that happened in all the previous generations in the Mega Timeline. We don't know exactly how they went, only that the big plot details from those games are for sure what happened. That puts variants of those games on the timeline. Something that sucks is that the regular versions of Sun and Moon don't even have that storyline, which forces me to add 3 branches. 1 for the non-canon protagonists of the Ultra games, and 2 for each of the protagonists of the regular SM games. The upcoming game, Legends ZA, obviously takes part in the Mega Timeline. Legends Arceus is a different question though. The shirts Akari and Ray wear at the beginning of the game are shirts from the Galar and Kalos region respectively. It's not to say that they exclusively exist in the Mega Timeline, but it's very hard to imagine them with a different story in the original timeline. However, I'll give an exception this time, cause this game is crucial to the lore, so I'll put it at the start of both timelines, with it occurring differently in each. The last few, cough cough, games that are left are the spin-offs. Well, I would like to ignore these. They all follow super different continuities and they are spin-offs after all, so they don't all apply to any of these timelines. Like, where would Learn with Pokemon, Type Adventure even go? If I was forced to put one spin-off into a timeline, I would put Pokken in the Mega Timeline, but not in the trunk because it has Mega Evolution. Now you see 2 neat timelines. All nice and dandy, right? Well, forget everything I just did. It's downright impossible to record every single branch in the franchise. The trunks for each timeline that I made are the main continuities, but as for the branches, or alternate universes, they're pretty much limitless. It's all thanks to Ultra Sun and Moon again, who introduced the concept of alternate universes where each villain succeeded in getting their goals done. The Ultra Recon Squad is also so crazy to properly place in a Mega Timeline because they could either exist as they do in those games or not like in the regular SM versions. I'd like to have a nice talk with the writer for this game. The backlash the original games got for having a long story didn't mean we wanted the multiverse as a plot point in the remake. So, let's go back to the trees and add an infinite amount of branches to each. Yeah, it's not so nice now. In any case, this generation sets a very interesting precedent. There's a universe for each villain who won, where they are the only reigning villain. But as we see in the Ultra games, not all of them would have lived. The Maxie and Archie who are in the story say that they were about to face a tragedy before they were transported to the main universe. Maxie was going to be falling into a fissure, while Archie was going to be swallowed by a huge tidal wave. If they weren't brought over, these guys would have died. The same goes for Lysander. He says he was transported as a bright light erupted from the ultimate weapon's blast. Given that the ultimate weapon's power is very destructive, it's safe to say that Lysander, in his delusions for a beautiful world, underestimated the amount of damage it would do, and just ended up being in a blast zone. The other 3 villains in Rainbow Rocket tell a different story. Cyrus got what he wanted and wasn't in any imminent danger, just like Getz's and Giovanni. One thing I know for sure is that there isn't a universe where you haven't liked, subscribed, and turned on notifications. If you haven't done that yet, give yourself into Fate and do that now. Thankfully, Game Freak and Nintendo know what they're doing. We have a concrete story to follow and haven't gotten into games that explore these alternate universes within the Mega Evolution timeline. I expect them to keep doing that unless they soft reboot the entire franchise again. If they do end up making that happening, and you're watching this video at that time, disregard everything that you see. Think of it as a cool time capsule of what the Pokemon storyline used to be. In the present, there's nothing to be afraid of. We'll just keep getting new lore as Pokemon expands their methods of conveying a story. If there's anything I missed or would like me to follow up on, let me know in the comments. The making of this video took a while, and I can say for sure that's the most time I've ever dedicated on the topic. The Pokemon lore is so interesting to me, and I'd like to share it with you guys. I've got nothing else to say for now, so stay safe and be sure to save your game before closing.